Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Seminoles Daily. I'm your host, Rob Krause, and today we're going to have a little fun talking about a position that is personally near and dear to my heart, and that's the linebacker position. Because I, in once in my glory days, was a linebacker, so I will always have a soft spot and an affinity for the show position guys that run a defense, the guys that are supposed to run around and make all the plays, especially in this 3-3-5 Tony White defense that Florida State has constructed. But first, I want to thank everyone who so far has liked and subscribed and watched these videos, loving those numbers climb up, and encourage you to please continue to share and like and subscribe with all your friends and all your family who love talking FSU football. As yes, the program is currently not in the position we're accustomed to, but sometimes that's where the fun is, because one day, maybe a few years down the line, when Mike Norvell has turned it around and this program is back to a national championship level, or maybe the guy who replaced Mike Norvell comes in and has brought this program back to an elite national championship level, look back at these early videos and say, hey, that it was worth it, man. This was good getting in on the ground floor, because the climb and the journey in sports, especially with a young team and especially with a team in general, that you've sat through those cold days to get to those sunshine days, it really does make it very, very special and much more meaningful if and when it finally does come in. Now, one of the ways that we're talking about Florida State can maybe get back to that elite level is if they start stockpiling the talent with some good blue chip high school players. Now, the last few days we talked about some composite 3-star guys, some good traits players, guys that maybe weren't at that blue chip level just yet, that maybe can be the development and contributing part. But Florida State got great news earlier this week about an actual legitimate blue chip prospect by the name of Makai Allen, coming out of State Power Don Bosco Prep, New Jersey, coming in out of Ramsey, New Jersey. The numbers on Makai: he's 6'1", he's 220. He's a top 15 linebacker in the country. He's a top 5 player in the state of New Jersey, which is starting to produce more and more elite level talent, especially coming out of a school like Don Bosco. Much like when we talked about with Ramel Kuhn Jr., how Brentwood Academy's a power. Don Bosco, right back up there as a traditional New Jersey state power in the tri-state region, that Philly, South Jersey, New York, North Jersey area. A lot of concentrated talent up there. And you really love to see a program like Florida State just be in the mix for guys like this, because you just never know. Yes, you do want to always kind of concentrate in your own backyard. You want to kind of fence in the state of Florida. You want to fence in South Georgia. You want to fence in South Alabama and kind of dip in here. But when you can cherry pick and you can get a big time player out of out of the Northeast region, the most densely populated part of the country, as far as kind of a national fan base goes, that we like to consider Florida State to be, getting a guy like that to come down, it's really a big part, because you never know what type of, steel and talent you're going to get to come down here and contribute to this program. So, other things you got to like about this kid is stats: 58 tackles last year, 10 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, which you really like out of an outside linebacker. That means he can kind of set the edge and can get at the quarterback and comes in controlled with with a purpose. He doesn't just kind of come in willy-nilly. With the 58 tackles, he's got a clear nose for the football. The tackles for loss, that tends to mean that when he's breaking it down, he's not getting, he's not in bad position. He's not getting spun out of a tackle. He's not getting stiff arm. He's coming in controlled, coming in, breaking it down, getting at the legs. That's what you like to see. The other thing, 3 interceptions and 1 for a touchdown. When you think about some great outside linebacker play, some of the greats, speaking of, North Jersey, one Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence was great at everything. But one thing he was really great at was just getting that ball in the interception and taking it to the house. So you really love to see a kid that's got the versatility and the aggression to kind of come in and, play, both at the line of scrimmage, back in the defensive backfield if he has to. Really versatile kid. Really like to see that. Now, part of the biggest reason, the biggest success right now going on of getting this kid in here, has been the success of a Seminole great one, Ernie Sims the third. Big Ern, doing big things. You love to see it. You love to see a legacy. This is why you love to see a legacy in your coaching staff, because not just do the fans get nostalgic, and we all love to get nostalgic for our ex guys, especially a guy like Ernie Sims, who was such a force, in that early mid 2000s, and a big part of those teams that won an ACC championship in '03 and won an ACC title in '05. You really love to see a guy, an NFL first round NFL draft pick. He comes back home, comes back to his hometown of Tallahassee, comes back to his school where his parents were legacy athletes. And not only is he coming in, started out last couple years as an assistant, kind of climbing that ranks, recruiting coordinator, assistant there, kind of getting to know these kids, but actually does an amazing job of once getting promoted, becoming the new linebackers coach, of getting elite prospects to come visit Florida State, which was not really happening under the previous position. Now, some of that is just that new car smell of a new coach and a new voice in the locker room. But a big part of it also, again, is a guy that these kids relate to, but more importantly, knows the area, knows the program, and can tell these kids, hey, man, you want to come to Florida State and play here? You want to wear that spear? I'll tell you what you got to do. I'll tell you the work you got to put in. I'll tell you the dedication that goes into it. And I will tell you everything you need to be a Seminole great. Because look, man, my name's on the wall, bro. My name's right there. Okay. It says Ernie Sims. Okay. I've got the awards. I've got the accolades. I've done it. And if you listen to me and if you follow me, you can, go in these footsteps and get your own name on the wall and get your own name called on the first night of the NFL draft, which is coming up very shortly. And we're going to have a good conversation about that later as well. Stick around for that in the next couple of days. But what you really like to see about Ernie too is that this is not the only blue chip prospect that has been rumored to come and visit Florida State. And we're going to have a couple conversations about that the next 2 days as well. So keep an eye on the good job that big old Ernie Sims, Big Ern, is doing there. Now, as we know, we're not the only ones in this mix. He did have a top 8 released on Instagram, and they are as follows: Syracuse, Rutgers, Texas, Tennessee, Texas A&M, South Carolina, Illinois, and your Florida State Seminoles. Now, per his 24/7, he does have a scheduled trip, an official visit lined up in a couple of weeks for South Carolina. He did take a trip recently to Illinois, and all signs were he did very well there. Had a great time there. Illinois did a good job of getting themselves into that mix, as did South Carolina. I would be concerned, more importantly, about the 3 schools by the name of Texas, Tennessee, because again, that's SEC, that's the big money. They've got the boosters, they've got the bags, they've got the history. Texas and Sarkisian is a very good recruiting program, a good recruiting school right now. And they're usually always looking to snag some, additional depth pieces and so on. Tennessee, they love to drop bags as well. NIL, SEC money, and, Heupel's done a very good job of getting that program back into not the elite Tennessee top 5 Phil Fulmer era that we're so accustomed to, but they are certainly, for the first time in 2 decades, a consistent top 25 program, and have kind of firmly put themselves back into that at least top half of the SEC, trying to get into that top quarter zone. Now, the sneaky one is Rutgers, and I know what you're thinking. It's Rutgers. It's not the traditional power, even at their heights. They don't really, do a whole lot better than 6, 7, 8 wins in the Big Ten. But Greg Schiano is a Jersey guy. Greg Schiano is the type of Jersey guy that just absolutely bleeds this state, has the pork roll or the Turner ham, whichever one you prefer to call it, has his bagels, has his lox, has his scrambled eggs. I'm pretty sure he's probably a big Sopranos guy, would be my guess. I know they've done, some kind of plays on that back when, Tony was around. But still, the point being is that he can recruit, and he recruits 2 states very well. He recruits his home state very well, and he dips down into Florida from his days at Miami and knows how to get that Florida talent. So it would be just kind of a nice little just desserts, if you will, if you were to, for once, kind of come into Greg Schiano's backyard and swipe one of his guys. I'm not sure just yet if Mekhi has announced an official visit to Rutgers anytime soon. But part of the issue, though, is that he doesn't necessarily need to have an official visit to Rutgers. He can just drive over there and hang out on the weekends if he wants in an unofficial capacity. That's kind of the luxury and beauty of when you're recruiting an athlete that's in your backyard, is you can kind of bring them around pretty frequently. Think a lot about, again, not to bring up a sore subject, but Travis Hunter, even though before he, signed with Jackson State, let's be honest, there were some pretty strong rumors and inclinations that if he wasn't going to sign with Deion and Jackson State, he was actually probably going to wind up at Georgia before he backed out with FSU. Because again, you got this kid, he's local, he's in the backyard. Come on over, buddy, hang out for the weekend. Free tickets to the game. We'll hook you up, set you up, and on an unofficial capacity, we'll work that angle. So biggest thing for Ernie and Florida State is getting this kid back on campus in June. Keep that pressure on. Maybe, who knows, like we talked about yesterday, maybe trying to get this kid to verbally commit at his official visit. That'd be pretty sweet. That'd be pretty nice. But certainly something to keep an eye on as we look toward the future of the linebacker position with Ernie Sims coaching. Because, unfortunately, of all of Mike's bugaboos in the high school recruiting ranks, linebacker might be his biggest when we really think about it and we really break it down, because we look at the current state of the depth chart. When you look at it, the top 3 starters are all senior transfers, guys that they hit the portal for Ernie to bring in and work with, which is unfortunate because the 2 guys, the lone 2 guys, we really can't pluralize 2. It's not the Lone Rangers. It's more just the 2 guys who aren't transfers in your upperclassmen in that position, Blake Nicholson and Omar Graham, are kind of firmly been recruited over via the transfer portal. And that's unfortunate because you kind of had some high hopes that, again, as we talk about, it's 2026. These are your redshirt juniors, your redshirt seniors, your 4-year guys, the guys that you built into this program when you were building that first climb and getting them excited to join and sign. And so far, as they come in their 4th year, they just haven't turned in to the type of player you were hoping for. Now, granted, the development was not great in the previous years, but at that same time, it's maybe just not getting that quality of guy like you had hoped to use that recruiting bump of that early success. Blake Nicholson has had flashes. He has had some signs, but he's a little undersized still. He's a little out of position. They're not quite sure what they're really trying to do with him. Sometimes he's a tweener. Sometimes he's, dropping back. Sometimes he's run blitzing. It's just, there's kind of a mix of what they don't know really what to do with them. And Omar Graham, kind of a similar situation. I think he's the better linebacker between him and Blake. But again, a little undersized at times and not quite sure what Tony White wants to do with them. And now part of that is also, again, it's a new defense that you're adjusting to. Last year was the first year with a new defensive coordinator trying to figure out his personnel and what he wants to do. So maybe those guys don't ultimately quite fit the mold. And these transfer players that you're bringing in, guys like Chris Jones, who we are going to talk about, later on as the summer goes in, we'll really dive into the position groups. But right now it's blue chip season. More on that as well later. But the point being is that you've got your 4 and 5 year guys, and they're just, middle of the depth chart. So it's, again, hard to sustain success at that position when you have been so portal heavy, and the high school kids you've tried and nailed just can't quite break through into that starting lineup, in addition to some of the signing day, misses over the years as well. So to recap, the good news: Mekhi Allen, 4-star linebacker out of New Jersey, is coming to Tallahassee June 12th. Ernie Sims has been doing yeoman's work in trying to rebuild this room with some talent. There's going to be some heavy heat for this kid from his home school in New Jersey via Rutgers. Also keep an eye on Texas and Tennessee. And South Carolina is always willing to grab some bags, as are the Aggies, who we mentioned earlier in that mix as well. Stay tuned for some future episodes of Seminoles Daily, because I just know that we just saw today some big recruiting news that we had touched on earlier in the week. Maybe a possible flip, a possible commitment from a guy previously committed. at the quarterback position that we had talked about earlier. I don't know. We'll have a little more once I dive into research on that one. But again, this has been fun. I'm loving doing this. I hope you're enjoying these videos. I love talking Florida State, even when they're not very good. They're still my team. We still bleed with them. And being a Seminole on a losing day is being better than anybody else on a winning day. So everybody, this has been Seminoles Daily. I'm Rob Krause, and I will catch you later.